All right. My name is Ashley Hoyle. I am an associate programmer at Outfest. I'm so happy to welcome the Outfest audience to the What a Girl Wants Shorts block Q&A. Hopefully you've just watched all these amazing films on our digital platform, and I'm super excited to be here with the film teams from the program today. And I'm gonna give them a chance to introduce themselves before we get talking about their projects. So go right ahead.
Excellent. All right. I'm Marielena Loss. I go by she or her. I am one of the actors in Soft and Pink.
Hi, I am Victoria Bruno, she, hers, or her, and I play Queenie Carr in Soft and Pink.
I'm Denise. I go by she, her. Excuse my English, I'm from Germany. So, and I'm the director and the writer of Anna. Yeah.
I'm Philip, and I'm go by the pronouns he and him, and I'm the producer of Anna with Denise.
My name is Zoe Ward, she, her, and I'm the writer-director of Soft and Pink and proud collaborator of Maria and Victoria.
I'm Anais Cisco, pronoun she, her, and I'm the writer-director for Driplight Coffee.
Hi, I'm Imogen. My pronouns are she and her. I'm the writer and director of a short called Atomic Love.
Hi, my name is Jabun Jovu, and I'm the executive producer for We're My Girls. Oh, my pronouns are they and them.
Hi, Latoya Morgan, pronouns she and her. I am the writer and director of Team Maryland.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for taking the time to come together. And again, a huge congratulations to each of you. It's really exciting to have your films in our program this year. So I'll start by asking Imogen some questions about Atomic Love. This piece is so quintessentially 80s in style. Can you share with us what made you pick that period for your story?
I'm glad that came off as quintessentially 80s because it, could have not. But I think I was really interested in exploring the idea of technology and love and how we relate to each other and how, now we have all these apps and ways of communicating, and it seems like you can really curate the narrative that you're telling someone else or the way that they're interacting with your profile and the way that you can find love. And I wanted to explore a less polished, more vulnerable way of doing that, which I think, was through like a different form of video dating. And I wanted to explore like using a camcorder, trying it as a one take and seeing how someone could kind of unravel when they're trying to give a bit of their heart over to someone else.
Absolutely, yes. You hit it on the nose with the 80s style, but also definitely what you're saying about the ways that we kind of interact online today. And you touched on it, but my second question is, what about this topic attracted you exactly? And you can also share what statement you kind of hope that the film is making in the conversation around online dating and intimacy and technology.
Yeah, I think why I was attracted to the idea of, so I've collaborated with Priscilla and Maddie and my producer Yingna before, and we've had this we all identify as being LGBTQIA+. We kind of talk about how, I don't know, like how you often have to define yourself, and particularly in Australia when you're applying for funding, like you have to kind of out yourself all the time and tick certain boxes, like literally tick boxes to get funding and all that sort of stuff. And how, and when you're dating online, like you often have to identify yourself a certain way, and how it's often very confusing to find that language, and particularly setting it in the 80s or in a time before now when the conversation was very different. How do you explore that, and how do you explore it with someone that you're really close with, and what is the sort of vulnerabilities and dangers of doing that? And I think, Priscilla and Maddie are such brilliant actors, and we were just excited to really play with the role of the audience as well, because it's like direct address at the beginning, and then slowly as you continue watching it, it becomes something where you feel like you're intruding. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it's, we were just kind of trying to find a kind of fun way into a deeper topic about, exploring sexuality and who you love and how hard that can be.
Thank you so much. No, it absolutely comes across and answers the question. And yeah, it's one of the my favorite parts of the watch is how you actually start to feel like your stuff is happening that you're not privy to, closer to the end. So definitely all well rendered, no doubt. So I'm going to hop over and ask some questions of the Soft and Pink team. So glad that so many folks are on the call today. And just to kick it off, I'd love to hear from you guys, about the music being the center of your film. Can each of you speak to how it inspired, your sort of connection to the project and the story, and maybe if you feel like it, what influence Elvis may or may not have had on all of that?
Zoe?
Should I start? First, you can leave this in or cut this out, but I just realized that LaToya is also on this call. I follow you on Twitter. I love you. Thank you for everything you do. So what role music played in this? I don't remember how I got curious about this, but at some point I kind of realized that there was this sort of like hidden history of rock and roll that obviously, the people who should have gotten credit from the Black community, the Little Richards, that story. And then there's also the story of these sort of like rockabilly women who really were at the cutting edge of music, whose careers tended to be these stories of like, so-and-so went, touring with these huge names for a year, and then she decided that she wanted to have a family and she disappeared. She didn't fucking decide she wanted to have a family, she got pushed out, something about her, just like she wasn't following the rules, and so we don't know about her. So that was kind of the inspiration, kind of like, that there are these hidden figures in the folds of history, and I just wanted to tell a story that felt like it could potentially happen within those folds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, it was a nice way to connect with the time period, and also the song that Zoe had written, the lyrics anyway, for Soft and Pink, I think really speak to the breaking out of the hetero norms of just in general, but also specifically to the time period. So that was just a nice connector. Yeah.
I loved it myself because I feel like music in that time, there's a sort of innocence about it, even though it's, no one's living innocent lives, but it's almost like PG, and which everybody thinks were good old days, and so it's like a veneer off of what's really happening in the background. And so it was really nice that Zoe put in Soft and Pink, which was different, definitely, and that it was sort of scratching away at that veneer, and it was also really fun, just the music of that time period, and the costumes and the way that people talk and interact with each other. It really colors the whole film and the look of it, and in every way.
Yeah, absolutely. And a great fashion in addition to good music, and obviously a really important storyline. And to that point, I'm sort of curious about it being so focused on, creative expression as a means of, representation and freedom for women. What message are you hoping that this film sends to folks as it gets out there in the world?
The message is, I think that that there's this understanding that when we see a when we see a man in a movie who's been slighted, we sort of, we know the path that he's going to take to seek vengeance, right? And to me, what this film is about is showing that that women can have a breaking point too. They can have a point where they have a violent reaction, and that violent reaction is justified. And I know 95% of homicides are done by men, and that, you know, say what you will about where that comes from, but I do think that movies in general have kind of like left that on the table. Like, what can alienate a woman so much from herself that the only way forward is through other people? And that's why, like, lately I've been getting more into genre stuff, because I want to see what it's like when women have to make those life and death choices that we're so accustomed to making in Hollywood films. Hi, Dougie.
Oh yeah. I think it begs the question, how far are you willing to go to get what you want, despite what society says, despite what you previously said, and kind of being able to re-justify your own morals and your own standards within your own perspective. And I think this film does a really beautiful job of just bringing up that question, just having it on the table, but also going down the road to see what happens if somebody does take the non-traditional route or takes the questionable route. So yeah, it's this really beautiful thing, all including self-discovery and pride.
I also do want to say that I feel that it shows sort of the price we pay to speak up and to have our own voice with Queenie Carr, and of course because of the time period, it's a hefty price that she pays for having her own voice. So.
Absolutely, yeah, I see all of that in the film, and, you know, of course, no spoilers, but that, you know, the moment she makes that decision is arresting, but also really beautiful and well executed. So, you know, props to the whole team on bringing those important conversations to the forefront with this awesome short. I'm going to go ahead over and switch to the team from Driplight Coffee. Anais, I'm wondering from you about how your film tackles these questions of non-monogamy as well as artistic collaboration. And I'm wondering, how do you see those two as sort of connected?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think the non-monogamy within Driplight Coffee is like a theme or a language that is not necessarily the language of the characters. Like Callie and Mel, they're not necessarily identifying as being in open relationships explicitly as non-monogamy or polyamory, but they're kind of acting on their desires for one another, which is like just very powerful without needing to name it specifically or without having clear definitions of what those experiences could look like. They're actually like going out and implementing them and trying it out for themselves in their very complicated dynamic in the cafe. And in terms of collaboration, like filmmaking essentially is artistic collaboration. Everybody that we enlist to help us carry out our visions are offering or lending their creativity to the project. And specifically with Driplight Coffee, it was like super important to integrate visual art work within the story world as much as creating a piece of art. And I like to think that I was trying or aiming to make like an art house cinema piece that was inspired by a lot of Black women visual artists like Mickaleen Thomas or Lorna Simpson, Kara Walker, or Wangechi Matu. And so what we did in terms of the production design was reach out to some Black women artists locally based in Brooklyn and was like, hey, we're trying to make this story about Black women loving each other. Would you be open to including your artwork within this piece? And so while my goal was to like have the artwork and conversation with a lot of the dialogue and the script of the film, I also wanted to highlight and honor and celebrate Black women artists. So in the art gallery scene, that is artwork of illustrations produced by an artist named Stephanie Roy, based in Brooklyn, that I was inspired by or wanted to incorporate in the piece or use to add to the story. And the same with the artwork in the house. It's all by the aunt who plays Aunt Terry to Callie. It's her artwork. She's a mixed media artist based in Harlem from Brooklyn. And I was like, okay, you're gonna play Aunt Terry. Can I also incorporate your art and integrate it into cinema? Because it's something that I've known cinema to do with the mise en scène and thinking about how props become a part of larger painting that we are watching visually.
Thank you so much for that. And yeah, it's just one of the great strengths of the piece. It really does have such a rich visual texture to it, and I think it does exactly that and puts the you know, the sort of fine art in conversation with film in a really interesting way. But to the point that you were making about the characters and how complicated the relationships you present are, I'm wondering, because of some of the characters really struggling in the relationships in the story, what are you hoping that sort of, what message are you hoping that struggle and that complication sends?
Yeah, I think oftentimes people forget that things are not as simple as black and white. And I love the gray area of life because it's true to our experiences. Life is complex. And I really wanted to create a nuanced story world where it's not as simple or straight cut for these characters. They're not single, but they desire each other. So what do you do in a situation where you're desiring a person of the same gender for the first time in one instance, while you're in this long-term relationship that's becoming a bit taxing, and you're not really having a clear reason to break up with that partner? So I really just kind of wanted to make it very complex and real to a lot of our experiences and highlight just how people are navigating space, intimacy, desire, gender expression. And it's a short film, so I'm hoping I could flesh that out more in the feature that I'm working on now. And even thinking about kind of cracking the 3-act structure in half and going further into the life of Mel and going further into the life of Callie, but then also bringing it back together within the 3rd act, and just seeing what's informing their thinkings or their desires for one another and their desire to actually act on that desire. Because it's one thing to like hold that desire, but to take an action towards it is another. And so I just really wanted to show some of the missteps that happens in doing that without really having a blueprint or example before you to go off of.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, I think you were very concise and able to bottle all of that up into the short. And I'm sure I'm not the only person watching that is very interested in what a feature would look like from you. So congrats on the short, and thanks for your answers very much. I'm going to switch over and talk with the Where My Girls team. First and foremost, your subjects are first and foremost so talented, but also really open, and you're able to have a great conversation with them in the movie. What was your process like seeking these folks out?
I think first and foremost, it was like, it wouldn't have been possible without having the subjects that we had. They were phenomenal in the way that they led us into their artistry, the way they were vulnerable with their upbringing, their connection to Brooklyn and New York City as a whole as a space, and the way that's informed their artistry was super special. So just always and forever thankful to Dayberger, Miss Eves, and Who is Schizo for like letting us come in and tell their stories. But the process was really us being fans of their music and kind of seeing them around in different places, hearing them, and just always having the thought process of, this is so rich and so lyrical and so full, but they also have such complexity outside of their music as people and who they are, in a genuine way they want to reach out to their artists. So it was really a process of reaching out to them and saying, we're really big fans of your work. We're really interested in telling a story about you, presenting you, and giving you, most importantly, the terms to be taken on your own terms, because that was something that was really integral to us building this documentary narrative and making this story to people. We didn't want to present the same monolith or put them in the hole in the box that documentary so often does, where they have to present themselves in a very particular light. We were pretty intentional in trying to take them on their own terms and tell their artistry and their story the way that they feel would amplify and kind of align with their voices. So it was a very genuine process of reaching out to them, meeting up with them, talking to them about what we were trying to do, seeing if they were open. And we're so thankful that they were so receptive and so like willing to let us tell the story.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that they'll have a few more fans also after your film shows and meets its audience in the world. But I'm curious from you also how you feel like filmmaking was the right medium to sort of parallel with their music careers, and what you think it sort of brought out, having them, talk about their experience with music on camera.
It was, in all honesty, it was also very eye-opening for us, because coming into it and coming into a space where you're coming to take the subject on their own terms, you have to be open and willing to weave the narrative with the way that they want to express themselves and still stay true to them. We were interested by them being queer artists in the first place, but also just occupying the space of hip hop and what we understand and what we've been raised to understand it to be. Personally, I come from Zimbabwe, and a bunch of other people on my team were all around the US, and we've all had very different experiences with hip hop, but always tried to complicate this like monolith of hyper-masculine, and also especially in a space like New York and Brooklyn, which has a rich history of female MCs and female rappers. We really wanted to think critically about what the relationship between feminism and hip hop is, or even queerness and hip hop is, and how that doesn't necessarily get translated into the mainstream, but like how then we can complicate and nuance the monolith of like women in hip hop, queerness in hip hop, Black women in hip hop particularly, and what that relationship has to look like and what they're allowed to be like. So documentary filmmaking became an almost marriable platform for us, because we could take their artistry and their showmanship on that side, but then tell a story that gives you an insight and almost like a look into what it takes and what it means for them to become artists, for them to occupy the space, for them to complicate and be the nuance that like everyone seems to look for, but not understand that exists everywhere around them. That there is a giant underground queer hip hop scene, that there is like beautiful burgeoning acceptance of like bodies and performance and literally sexuality and Black womanhood in the way that these women are telling their stories. So documentary filmmaking gave us the platform to basically take them on their terms and let their music speak for itself as well. And it's just like you said at the beginning, having subjects that kind of bring a story to life and a narrative to life like that is always so special. So it's all the thanks to them, and it was a beautiful experience trying to work that story out and use this medium to tell that story for them.
Thank you for that incredible answer, and also for bringing us into that world and letting us meet your subjects. It was really, really a treat and a real bright spot in the program. So I'm going to ask a couple questions of the Anna team, who are very kindly staying up into the middle of the night to join us. I first want to know how you so palpably captured the youthful energy of summer in your film. I just want to hear how you achieved that, and what you thought that did for the story.
So when we were working on the how you say that, on the script of the film, when you're writing the film, we really wanted to have summer, like the heat and bodies, naked bodies and swimming pools and stuff like that. So it was so important for us to have that in the film. And basically what happened was that we got lucky, and that it was just the last week of summer where it was hot, and we didn't need to convince people to take off their clothes. They were happy to go into the pool and were happy to, just lay in the sun and do nothing. So everything we hoped for just happened, which was crazy cool. And we were so lucky that we had these great actors that got really along with each other. So they weren't always acting by script, but they were just going with the flow and just being themselves. And that was just awesome. They got clicked so well, and I think they just were having a great summer, really. They were having fun, they were staying out late. So that was just perfect for us.
Yeah, it feels so organic, the performances, but also the sense of place and the climate. So it makes total sense that it was really stemming from a place of real authenticity. But my second question
And I
is,
might,
yeah, no,
sorry
please.
to interrupt. I just might add that we carefully chose the place where the story takes place. It is where Denise grew up, and it's in the rural countryside of Bavaria. So I think the authenticity comes along with Denise knowing what she wanted and knowing exactly which places we had to go to capture this and that feeling of those teenagers in the summer.
Makes complete sense. Makes complete sense. You definitely get a sense of all of that and of the real knowledge of it from watching. But I'm curious, you know, it's so exciting to see sort of this sort of almost asexual representation on screen during your film. Can you share what made you want to tell this story, and what you find to be important about Anna as a character?
Yeah, I think it's so sad that asexuality is not represented enough in films. And why it was so important for us to tell this story is that that it needs to be more talked about. It needs to be talked about that it's normal. It needs to be there that how can you think that it's normal that that you're asexual when you're always surrounded by sexualized content? And so we wanted to bring up that it's got nothing to do with being shy, or that you can be loud and be asexual, and that it's got nothing to do with any of that. And so it was a very very important topic for us, and to talk about. I hope I get that question straight. Maybe Philip, you want to add something?
No, it's just that the way we approached it was Denise had her own experiences, because I don't know if you want to talk about it here. Maybe you just I give you the hint. So yeah.
Yeah, so a friend of mine, I knew her a long time, and we kind of grew up the same at the countryside in Bavaria, with a lot of partying. And so I knew her a couple of years, and then she told me that she's asexual. And honestly, I didn't know so much about it either. And it didn't occur to me that it was a possibility that she's asexual. And I was so shocked by myself that I didn't had it, you know, that it wasn't there in my mind that it is a possibility, that it was more important to me to talk about people about this, and to talk about that it's so rarely there in music, in films, in books and stuff, that that it started, I think, 2 years ago, to think about that project and what we want to do with the subject. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, Anna's such a fully realized character, and I think, you know, a really fabulous story to have part of our program this year. So thank you for honoring your friend in this way, and for a fabulous short.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, I want to turn it over to the team from Team Maryland, which really was one of my favorite films I got to program this year. I'm wondering, firstly, from you, Latoya, you know, your film tackles the relationship between private life and public life so well. What inspired you to explore that conversation?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. What really inspired me was, I'm a big politics nerd and a politics junkie. I probably watch way too much like cable news, and I'm always like digesting it. And one of my favorite movies is this movie written by Beau Willimon called The Ides of March. And it's this political movie, and it's about a husband and wife relationship amongst other things. But for me, the most exciting thing about those stories is the little behind the scenes things, the behind the curtain, where you get to really peek into people's lives. And, you know, being such a politics nerd, I hardly ever see any Black people or Black women, especially, portrayed on the screen in film. And so what I really wanted to do was tell a story that centered itself around a Black woman, and to really talk about like what happens in people's relationship is not necessarily the world's business. And so I was really fascinated by the idea of someone trying to weaponize someone's private life and use that for political gain, really.
Absolutely, and it comes across, and I think you also use space so well in the film. You know, can you speak a little bit to how you hoped that that room and that feeling in that room connected to some of those other things we were talking about?
Oh my God, I love that. Thank you for saying that. I love pressure cookers. And so I love the idea of being in this one room for the majority of the movie and just starting to feel like, oh my God, there's this event that's about to happen and we're dealing with this crisis. And one of the things that I told my actors is, you know, obviously there's going to be, there's a couple of iconic pictures where, you know, people are their heads together are in crisis. I thought a lot about there's a picture of, you know, Bobby Kennedy and JFK, and their heads are close together and they're talking about, you know, the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that was one of the photos that I put in the lookbook that I worked with my DP, and we talked about a lot. Just to be able to see them come together at certain pivotal moments and then be able to move apart, because it really was about the space they had between them in their relationship. And then one of my favorite moves of the movie is, you know, there's a move where they go into a side bedroom and she's gonna go out, and then, you know, the camera follows them and you're just in the heat of the moment of this big fight. And it was just really fun to have them. We had to shoot it like 13 times, which is a whole other thing, but it was great to like try to do it all in one shot basically, and then kind of circle around them and really just be in there with them in the moment.
13 was definitely the lucky number for you, because that tension really was you could taste it. It was well rendered. So congratulations to you and to everybody. Actually, this is, you know, sort of wrapping up our Q&A with the awesome team from This Short's Black. We hope that folks will keep watching everything on the Outfest platform until August 30th. And I'm going to turn it over to gallery view so everybody can wave their goodbyes to the audience. Thank you guys all so much for joining. This was a real pleasure for me to get to talk to all of you, and congratulations. Cheers to you all. We're so excited to present your films.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you all. Definitely stay in touch, and I'm excited for you. Hopefully you can watch our conversation on the platform as well.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks again for taking the time, everybody. Have a good one.